Today we're going to be talking about cardio training, and is it enough just to run on a treadmill without any structure or science behind it? Stick with me, and I'm going to talk about how you can train to optimize your life and optimize your fat burning as well. Roll intro clip. So let's understand what zone training is before we jump into the science of training. Zone training refers to the process of exercising in different heart rate zones during cardiorespiratory training, which yields different results. Keep in mind, when we look at people training, they usually train at a high intensity and they have a very bad diet, and that combination of these two can yield very, very negative results. So that's why I'm making this video, to try to get people to understand a bit more about what zonal training is and how you can maximize your training to get the best results out of it. So there's 5 different zones that we have within zonal training, 1 being the lowest in terms of your heart rate and 5 being the most extreme of that, or the highest heart rate. Looking at this graph where it shows you in a very rough estimation of where your zones are, you're looking at a heart rate, which is zone 1 from 50 to 60%, and then goes into zone 2, 3 and 4, and then you have zone 5, which is close to your maximum, which is 90 to 100% of your effort. Each zone starts to utilize the body differently, and what I mean by that is what types of fuel it uses to get those results or those performance to come out. So most people, when they train, they're training in this garbage zone where it's too high in intensity to build any true aerobic capacity and too low in intensity to truly stress the body glycolytically. Now let's talk about zone 2. I'm only going to focus on zone 2 and zone 5 today, and I'll explain why those two are the most important ones to focus on, and what both of those are going to actually give you when you train in those zones correctly. Let's start with zone 2. Zone 2 is basically where the mitochondria produces the maximum ATP output under purely aerobic conditions. What does that mean? It's cardio training while keeping your heart rate at a constantly low level. Think of it as if going for a jog, riding a bike, maybe even walking outside, but you're able to maintain a conversation. The figure that you're seeing on the screen now is basically the metabolic map of fuel sources utilized depending on
exercise intensity. It's marked by the heart rate. Fat utilization and cellular metabolism peaks in zone 2. The crossover point, which is marked where glucose exceeds fatty acids as a fuel source, occurs in transitional training zone 3.
So basically what that means is that once you go from zone 2 to zone 3, you stop using fat as your source. So how do you know you're in zone 2? Let's take a step back and look at zone 1. Zone 1 is basically what we're doing right now. Our heart rate is low, we're able to talk, and we can keep doing this for a very long time. Now, once we bring up that pace or that intensity a bit more, we go into zone 2. And zone 2 should feel like, if you're walking or jogging or on the bike, that you're able to hold a conversation. I'm not going to say comfortably, but you're able to hold it, and you're not at that point where you have to take in extra air every now and then to be able to do that. Then you've gone a bit too far. Keep in mind that this zone is really dependent on each and every individual and their fitness level. So for some people it might be walking, for other people it might be jogging, for other people it might be running. It all depends on how fit you are to be able to go into these different zones. And when we talk about zone 2, some people will find that by just walking outside, other people will find that by just running or jogging. So now we understand what zone 2 is and how it feels to be into zone 2. So how frequently should we do this during the week? Generally speaking, you're talking about 3 to 4 times a week, and each session is about an hour to an hour and a half in length at that steady pace. Find that some people, because their fitness level might not be there, that they might have to start at a lower level, maybe 20 to 30 minutes, and then keep increasing that over time to be able to get to that peak or the optimum amount of zone 2 training, let's say. So on the other side of that spectrum, we're looking at zone 5, which is your 90 to 100% effort. Your heart rate is about a 90 to 100% effort, which is close to your maximum. And this is where you're talking about an all-out effort, or a 4x4, where you're working for 4 minutes at a high level, and then you're resting for 4 minutes. and it's a ratio of 1-to-1. So if you work for 1 minute, you rest for 1 minute, and so on and so forth. That's essentially what your protocol should look like. Keep in mind now, when we're looking at a zone 5, this is one of the few things that are highly correlated between VO2 max and your longevity. So the higher your VO2 max, the longer life you're living. And there's a lot of science to back that up. So you're going to ask now, what is VO2 max? And just to make this as simple as possible, so VO2 max, a measure of aerobic fitness, is a physiological parameter by which we are able to estimate how much oxygen your body consumes when working at a very high level of exercise. It's a great way to assess overall body function and health, as it measures the integrity of multiple body systems. So now that we understand what a zone 5 looks like and feels like, how often should we be doing this? And the reality is, because it's at a high intensity and because it's at a threshold of your maximum, it shouldn't be more than once or twice a week. So what that protocol looks like, as we explained before, it's kind of a 4x4, which is 4 minutes of work at your maximum and 4 minutes of rest. All right, and there's other ways you can set this up if you were to program this into your weekly activity. So another way of doing this is doing 3 minutes at a zone 2, for example, which is a nice easy pace, and then going 1 minute all out as hard as you can at your VO2 max, if you already know what that is. If you don't know what that is, it's just pushing as hard as you can. Your heart rate is going to be 90 to 100% of its maximum. And then going back to your 3 minutes of zone 2 training, repeating that for 20 to 30 minutes of activity, once or twice a week. This is why maybe CrossFit can help when it comes to a zone 5 training, is that you can kind of push your limits or your heart rate to 100% and sustain that. But it has to be structured when you are doing that kind of workouts. And it shouldn't be more than once or twice a week to get the maximum benefit from that. Anything beyond that, there's a lot of wear and tear into the system, and it stops yielding the benefits that once or twice will bring you. So now that we understand those two zones and why are we advocating, or why does the science talk about the importance of this and training in those two zones and not falling into that nomad's land of that garbage zone, which doesn't yield much, generally speaking, and not understanding maybe the science and the heart rates behind where you should be training, there's a few things that we need to understand. When we're in zone 2, you're training for metabolic health and exercise adherence. What does that mean? So once you start to move out of zone 2, you start to see a drop in fat oxidation and an increase in glucose oxidation, more of the sugars then. So some of the misconceptions or misunderstanding is that a lot of people do the high intensity training thinking that they're going to be able to burn a lot more fat. And the reality is they're going more into the glucose or the sugar burning. And what is actually going to benefit them in terms of fat burning is that zone 2 sustainable state that they can prolong for a longer period of time and do it more frequently during the week. So we can't think of this as calories or burning calories, that means it equates to burning fat. No, the reality is calories can come from many different sources. But what I want people to understand here is that if I go into that zone 5 or even that 4, you're going into more of that glucose burning or the sugar burning, which isn't probably what a lot of people are trying to achieve. But if we dial it down and go into zone 2 and do it for a long piece that is sustainable, and like I said, you can have a conversation while doing it, then you're going to benefit more from the fat oxidation or the fat burning more than you will from a high intensity workout. When you're working out, you shouldn't be thinking about burning calories. You need to think about how your body partitions fuel or how efficient it is at using fuel to keep the body going. I hope you enjoyed that video or you benefited from it somewhat. I'm hoping to do more videos for you guys, and honestly, it's something I'm enjoying quite a bit. And there's a lot to learn as I'm doing this, from the editing of the videos to the writing of the scripts to researching the topics. And it's something I've really kind of found beneficial to me when I do this on so many different levels. So if you do have questions, you can put them in the comments below. Ask me anything you want and maybe ideas for future videos as well. So I'll see you next week, hopefully on my next video. auto. Auto works. Why didn't I have it on auto before? Is that even clear? It's so weird talking to yourself on a camera while your arm is up. Why are those there?